He told me, he told Puff. He never mentioned a damn thing to Big. As his label mate, he had an obligation. As a fellow New Yorker, he had an obligation to tell Big. And I don't want to hear about I don't want to snitch, I don't want to rat, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
For almost 30 years, the loss of Christopher Wallace, the world's notorious B.I.G., still hangs over hip-hop like a heavy cloud that refuses to move. His story never settled, his case never closed, and the streets never stopped whispering. Every new year brings another rumor, another exclusive, another person claiming they finally cracked what happened that night in Los Angeles.
Because Mase want to laugh and lie about the situation. Let's get into it, bro. I want to get into this. I want to tell you that Mase had a duty and an obligation.
And just when it felt like the noise was fading, everything gets loud again. Real loud. This time it ain't random detectives or hidden bloggers stirring trouble. It's two men who were right next to the chaos, and now they're pointing fingers at each other with heat that feels way too personal. Diddy's former bodyguard Gene Deal and bad boy rapper Mase just cracked the vault open again, calling each other out for betrayal, coward moves, and hiding what really happened the night Biggie took his last ride. For decades, the world focused on the black Chevy Impala, the mystery shooters, the talk about West Coast revenge, and dirty cops moving sloppy. But when Gene Deal stepped up with his newest claims, everything flipped in a way nobody expected. He didn't blame some crew in the shadows or nameless street soldiers chasing clout. He said the danger came from inside the circle, from people Biggie trusted. According to Deal, those bullets weren't even meant for Biggie. They were meant for Diddy.
All those things, bro, it's crazy to me that these guys will be continuously always bringing that up when, one, they're not telling the truth. Two, they're not naming names. And three, and speaking of Mase, played a big part in the whole situation.
And the craziest part? Deal is saying the one who lined it up wasn't someone from Death Row or any enemy label. He claims it was a man sitting on the same roster. He puts the name directly on Mase, saying the world only got fed the surface while a deeper betrayal stayed hidden all these years. Gene claims Mase had a money motive, a deep grudge about those contracts he felt were trapping him, and he says that grudge was heavy enough to twist everything into straight-up disloyal behavior. The story sounds unreal at first glance because most people remember Mase as the clean-cut golden boy of Bad Boy, the smooth Harlem talker who floated on beats with Diddy and Biggie. He's the same guy who helped create the mo money, mo problems moment the whole world still dances to. But in Gene's version, that image gets flipped upside down. In his retelling, Mase wasn't a loyal teammate heartbroken over losing a label brother. Gene paints him as someone who turned from insider to quiet enemy, a man who allegedly wanted Diddy gone and didn't care who got caught in the mix. According to Gene, the night Biggie was hit, the real target wasn't the rapper the world adored, it was Diddy. Biggie just happened to be in the wrong spot at the wrong second, caught up in someone else's storm. If any part of this were real, it wouldn't just rewrite hip-hop history. It would blow up the whole story fans been repeating for damn near 3 decades. The myths, the documentaries, the rumors, all of it would sound different instantly.
I heard some things and I saw some things that was disturbing to me. That somebody sent me the video, I looked at it, and it was Cam and Mase, and here they go laughing again about the security the night Big lost his life, which was disturbing to me, bro.
And what makes this new piece so explosive is that Gene Deal didn't just pop up yesterday. He's been telling fragments of this saga for years, but this latest claim feels like a full-on blast. In the past, he pointed fingers at Nation of Islam members, LA street crews, and even hinted that dirty officers might have had a role in setting the whole scene. This time, Gene didn't aim at gangs, officers, or outside enemies. He said Mase was the one who needed to answer for what happened. And what makes his words hit harder is simple. When Biggie was taken in March 1997, Gene Deal wasn't some random dude in the background. Investigators treated him as one of the few witnesses who actually mattered. He spoke to both the LAPD and the FBI, and his statements are still sitting in those official files today.
Mase came back from that game. He let me know, and he let Puff know. that he was good. They wanted Puff and Big dead.
So it forces a tough question that makes the whole story feel shaky. If Gene was credible enough for federal agents, then what do we do with this new version he's pushing now? But Mase didn't let that claim float around for 1 second. He came in blazing hot. He called into Gene's show directly, his voice tight with anger, and he fired back without hesitation. According to Mase, nothing Gene said was truth. He said it was straight deflection. He said Gene was trying to shift blame because he was the one who failed that night. Mase snapped back that Gene's whole job was to protect Biggie, and instead he froze up when things got real. He threw the word coward at him, saying Gene was smearing everybody else just to hide from his own mistakes. He challenged him to stop pointing fingers and finally admit what really happened on his watch.
Gene, here go Miss Wallace.
Hey, Miss Wallace, Gene Deal.
Oh, hi, Gene. How are you?
All right, man. You know I ain't seen you since I came to your house and had that conversation with you. How you been? You all right?
I've been okay. I've been watching you on Facebook.
The moment Mase joined the call, the whole thing stopped being an interview. It turned into a full-on shouting storm. Both men talking over each other, voices raised, throwing accusations, throwing insults, each claiming the other one was rewriting history. The tension was so thick you could practically feel it through the screen. And after one last explosion, Mase finally hung up. But even after the line went dead, Gene kept talking into the silence, still throwing heavy words into the air like his rival was somewhere listening on mute. The heat between these two forces, one big question. Who actually benefits from flipping this story around now? Gene Deal has spent years pushing his version of the tale, always putting himself in the role of the loyal soldier who got betrayed by the same machine he protected. He even admitted that Diddy dropped him the moment he found out Gene was talking to investigators. Ever since, Gene turned exposing the bad boy era into almost a second career, claiming he saw things the world never got told.
Mase had a duty as a label mate to tell Chris, these dudes want you dead.
And his words hit different because he wasn't a nobody on the sidelines. He sat in those cars, watched every move the entourage made, and saw real fear up close the night everything fell apart. That kind of access makes his accusations sting in a way outsiders can't match. But Mase got his own scars from that era too. He's talked plenty about being left behind in LA on the same night Biggie was hit, sitting in a hotel room while 70 Bloods prowled the hallways looking for somebody to hurt. He even says Gene had to come get him out, though Gene says that's another lie added to the pile. The back and forth only twists the story deeper, making everything feel even more confusing. Because if Mase was truly cornered in that hotel, scared for his life, then why is Gene saying he wasn't even there at all? And if Gene really believes those bullets were meant for Diddy, then why didn't he call off the convoy that rolled out toward Fairfax and Wilshire that night? Why keep moving straight into danger?
I'm gonna get down to it like this, bro. My grandfather once told me back in the day, yo, if a brick hits you, say ouch. And I had to look at that in a way, whereas that, you know, if somebody is not saying anything directly to you, or you know they not talking about you, you shouldn't have something to say.
Each man's story slices into the other's credibility, like they're both peeling away layers trying to expose the other one's weakest spot. And the more they talk, the more it feels like we're watching two different realities collide, leaving everybody wondering if either one is telling the full truth. The only thing that feels solid right now is this. Their feud lit up an old flame and dragged back details the culture tried to bury deep. It reminds everyone that Biggie wasn't just a legend on posters. He was a young man stuck between powers bigger than anything he could control, and those same forces are still fighting over his name decades later.
I knew that somebody was going to die that night. Somebody was going to get shot.
What makes everything hit even harder is the timing. Just weeks ago, Biggie's mother, Voletta Wallace, passed away at 72, and at her funeral, Mase showed up as a quiet mourner, sitting low, reflecting on what he described as the true end of an era. He even talked about sitting near one of Diddy's sons, looking over, unsure if he should say hello. He said he'd still visit Diddy in prison if he got the chance, explaining that moments like this are when people need someone to check in and make sure they're holding up. That calm, respectful version of Mase looks completely different from the fiery voice screaming at Gene Deal on the phone. Two images that don't match but somehow both exist. One moment, he's the grieving friend paying respects. The next, he's going off, defending his name against heavy accusations. And fans don't know which version is the real one.
Because she was, I think, understanding clearly what had happened. And I think she was starting to see that other people were responsible than who she previously had believed.
Meanwhile, Gene isn't softening at all. If anything, he's pressing even harder in every interview. He says the music industry twisted Diddy into what he calls a monster, claiming those ruthless habits came from the men who mentored him: Russell Simmons, Clive Davis, and Andre Harrell. Gene insists that the night Biggie passed wasn't just tragic. He says it was predictable. Gene says he straight up warned Diddy not to pull up to that party, claiming he literally told him, "My man, don't go to this party. One of y'all going to fall." He swears those were his exact words, but they still went. And Biggie never made it back home. Whether that warning was real or something added later to make sense of the chaos, it gives the whole timeline a dark, haunting vibe, like the danger was already written in the air. It's the kind of detail that sits in the back of your mind, making you wonder who knew what, and at what moment everything could have changed.
The reason I'm speaking on this, and you allow me to speak on this on your platform, is that because when people hear something about bad boy security, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was either Big Gene, Wolf, Paul. They had people that was behind the scenes.
And it doesn't stop there. Not even close. Gene pushes it further, even accusing Mase of failing at something basic: looking out for Biggie. He says there were open threats coming from Cripsets who wanted both Diddy and Biggie taken off the board. Gene claims Mase told him and Diddy about it, but never warned Biggie directly. To Gene, that silence wasn't an accident. He says it was envy. He paints Mase as someone who allegedly kept quiet because he wanted the #1 spot at Bad Boy, acting like Biggie walking into danger was convenient for him. Gene makes it sound like Mase was willing to watch his own label mate head into a deadly situation just to slide up in rank. Of course, Mase denies all of this with zero hesitation. He says Gene is fabricating wild stories just to destroy his name and shift blame. But once an accusation like that hits the air, it doesn't disappear. It hangs there, heavy, sticky, and impossible to ignore. We can't pretend Gene hasn't pushed the blade even deeper by bringing Biggie into the mix. He once claimed Big didn't even rate Mase as an artist, saying Biggie thought Cam'ron was the real Harlem talent. According to Gene, Biggie supposedly said it out loud, preferred Cam'ron's style, and even laughed when Mase dropped the murder from his name. Gene says Biggie mocked him behind closed doors like he wasn't impressed at all. If any of that holds weight, then Mase wasn't just dealing with contract beef or label politics. He might have felt overshadowed by the same man who made the label shine so bright. That's a tough shadow to stand in. Imagine showing up to studios knowing your own label mate low-key doubts you, and then years later being accused of having a hand in his death. That kind of tension messes with anyone's head. The feud between Gene Deal and Mase isn't just finger-pointing. It feels like a battle over the entire story of hip-hop's biggest tragedy. Every accusation shifts the spotlight from LA sets, to Dirty Cops, to Diddy, and now to Mase. Each twist makes the truth feel further away, and every denial only tightens the pressure. And the way their words always circle back to that night in 1997 is another reminder that Biggie's loss never healed. It just got covered up by time. Those wounds didn't disappear. They just formed a thin scab waiting for somebody to drag their fingernail across it again. And as wild as Gene's accusations against Mase sound, they almost look small when you put the spotlight on the one figure who hangs over this whole tragedy like a giant shadow. Diddy's name sits right in the middle of this storm because for years people whispered that the mogul knew way more than he ever admitted. Some say his empire wasn't built only on talent and hustle, but on choices made behind closed doors where nobody could see. And Gene Deal paints a heavy picture of those final days, claiming Diddy's whole vibe shifted into something jumpy and restless, almost like he felt danger sliding toward them. Gene says Biggie wanted to get out of LA and fly overseas, but Diddy kept pushing, almost obsessively, for him to hit that party, the same one that turned into the scene of tragedy. And that leads to the question nobody likes to ask. Why insist so hard? Why put Biggie out there when the tension in LA was already boiling? That one decision hangs in the story like a loose thread, begging the world to tug on it and see what comes undone. And Gene doesn't stop there. He says Diddy wasn't just anxious, he was strategic, moving people like pieces on a board. In one interview, Gene said he warned him straight up, "Yo, Puff, I got some intel. If we go to this party tonight, one of us gonna get taken out." According to Gene, Diddy brushed it off completely and kept pushing the plan forward like nothing was wrong. That kind of detail hits hard because it makes you rethink the balance of power that night. Was Diddy so confident he thought nothing could touch him? Or did he know something about how everything was supposed to unfold? These questions hang heavy, almost too heavy, and they make an already messy timeline feel even darker and more unclear. This story stopped being just about Mase or street sets a long time ago. Now it reaches straight toward the mogul at the center of it all. Because the idea that Diddy may have gambled with lives just to protect his own throne is a possibility the culture can't ignore anymore. And while people try to wrap their heads around that, another theory keeps getting louder and heavier: the shadow of Suge Knight and the network he controlled on the West Coast. Industry insiders have whispered for years that Suge pulled strings from behind bars, using people who moved freely between the streets and the prison gates. Reports claim he used visitors to pass messages, giving instructions to a known associate named Poochie to handle the job. For a price. If that's real, then Biggie's death wasn't some random moment. It was a structured hit designed to look messy so nobody would connect the dots. And when you add the detail that certain LAPD officers, the same ones later exposed in the Rampart scandal, were allegedly moonlighting as security for Suge's death row circle, everything starts feeling way too organized. Suddenly, the drive-by doesn't look like quick street violence. It feels like a script where the ending was locked in before the cars even stopped at that red light. And the whispers about double crosses only get thicker. Some sources say the very people hired to protect Bad Boy, certain Crip sets, were running side deals with Death Row at the same time. So if Biggie's team thought they were buying safety, were they really handing money to men who were playing both sides? That idea hits like ice water. Because if that's the case, then the East Coast crew didn't walk into danger blindly. They walked in trusting guards who were already compromised. For a global star like Biggie, that's not a mistake. That's betrayal standing right beside you in plain view, wearing a friendly face. If the people hired to protect you can't be trusted, then the only real question becomes who actually wins when the smoke finally clears. And that's where things get even darker, because official investigations have hinted for years that the shooters weren't just street soldiers. Some of them may have been tied to insiders wearing badges. FBI agent Phil Carson even said he had proof the LAPD was compromised, claiming certain officers knew exactly who fired those shots but buried the truth under layers of silence. Carson even named Amir Muhammad, godparent to an LAPD officer's children, as the likely shooter. It sounds like something from a conspiracy film, but the wild part is, this all came from sworn reports, not fantasy. And when you line that up with Gene Deal's memories of Diddy acting strange in those final days, plus the long shadow Suge Knight cast over the whole coast, you end up with a mosaic that feels impossible to ignore. A picture where everyone looks guilty in their own way, yet not a single person has ever been officially held responsible. Gene talks about that night with a pain that still shows on his face. He remembers the frantic sprint to Cedars-Sinai, the heavy fear in the car, and the small hope that Biggie might somehow pull through. Then came the brutal moment when reality hit and that hope disappeared for good. He says Diddy broke down, calling for prayers, collapsing under the weight of the moment, while Gene stood there cold and blunt, telling him there was nothing left to pray for. The words cut deep, almost harsh enough to scrape the air, but they revealed just how shattered the trust was between men who once traveled the world side by side at the peak of their careers. And whether anyone believes Gene Deal's version or not, the bitterness in his voice carries real weight. It makes the whole tragedy feel bigger than one star being taken. It feels like the night an entire empire cracked from the inside, leaving pieces still scattered decades later. All of this leaves us staring straight into a dark pit of unanswered questions. Did Diddy knowingly push Biggie into danger just to keep himself protected? Did Suge Knight's reach stretch way farther from behind those bars than anyone dared to say out loud? Were the Crips simply opportunists caught in the middle? Or were they carrying out a plan crafted by someone with real power pulling strings from the shadows? And the heaviest question of them all, did law enforcement bury the truth to protect their own? Every theory clashes with the next, yet each one has just enough real detail to make you lean in and listen. That's the twisted part of this whole story. The closer we crawl toward the center, the darker, messier, and more tangled everything becomes. And now here we are in the present, watching Gene Deal and Mase fire accusations across the airwaves like they're fighting a private war in public. Each one is trying to grab control of the narrative, each one calling the other a liar, each one claiming they know the real truth. But this feels way bigger than two men arguing. It feels like a battle over legacy itself. Because behind all the rumors, all the interviews, all the explosive claims, there's still the image of a young man from Brooklyn who changed the entire sound of music and whose life ended at 24. The real question hanging over everything is simple but brutal. Will we ever get the full truth? Or will this story stay locked away behind egos, secrets, and old power moves nobody wants exposed? As the feud gets louder, uglier, and more personal, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The truth about Biggie's final night might be way more layered, way more sinister, and way more heartbreaking than anybody imagined. Was he taken out by a rival, betrayed by insiders, sacrificed to keep a business empire alive? Or is the real story still buried in files, memories, and silence because it's too dangerous to bring out? And we want to hear from you. Drop your theories in the comments, let us know what angle you believe, and don't hold back. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And I'll catch you in the next one. We're watching this story unfold together.